Hey Mystic, how you doing? Welcome to Modern Mystic Messages. I'm Teresa, and thank you so much for stopping by, clicking on the video. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. In any event, I'm just happy that you're here. And today I'm going to share something with you that's a little bit different than I've done before on the channel. We'll be doing more of it. I had said I was going to start kind of sharing whatever thoughts or what have you that come to mind. And truthfully, this was a little bit different because this wasn't something that I thought about coming out of meditation. I was actually awakened at 1:33 in the morning. And I remember exactly because my eyes were barely working, but I kind of jotted some things down. And truthfully, it may take me a minute to kind of decipher some of it because I didn't try to go back through or figure out. I just wanted to take a look at the notes because it led me to some other insights. And I had actually had someone, and I said I was going to talk about the Gospel of Judas, and I will. But even before then, I wanted to talk about the things that I've got here because, in a way, they kind of bleed into each other a little bit. I woke up at 1:33. Like I said, I looked at the clock, and by the time I finished writing the first time, it was 1:44, and I kind of drifted off to sleep, and then I woke up again at 2:02, and that was a completely different message. Now, I've had a hard time remembering my dreams. I've been wanting to. People keep telling you write your dreams down, even if it's only one word. And I wake up sometimes, I feel like I've been battling dragons and this and that. And I'll remember bits and snatches of my dreams, but I'm not remembering them, the sequences in long detail. I just sometimes I wake up and I know I've been busy in my sleep, but I really can't tell you what the dreams are about completely. And this was, I don't really remember the dreams, but when I first woke up, it felt like one of those. Honestly, I felt like I don't know how to describe it exactly, but you kind of wake up when it feels like you're being pulled back into your body. It's almost like you've been in the beach, like in the seawater all day or whatever, and you finally kind of stumble up on shore and you're really heavy and you just kind of fall on the sand. That's what it felt like coming into my body. And then the first thing that came to my mind was, why does any of this matter? And that's not even a conscious thought that I entertain a lot. I kind of just, over the past several years since I asked for the Ascended Masters to work with me and realized that some of my clairs were starting to ramp up, I'm just trying to really start differentiating what was me and what was spirit and just following the intuition, especially when it comes down to like the information, the text that I'm looking at, the videos and different channels and teachers and things like that. I've just been going with the flow. So that question, let me put on, yeah, why does any of this matter, isn't really a waking thought that I've had, but it was one of the things that came to me when I first woke up. So I'm like, okay. And here was the answer. And I'm gonna try to read it because like I said, this is not my normal handwriting. This was clearly just waking up, really strange looking handwriting. I mean, can barely see, eyes, glasses wasn't on, none of that. But anyway, why does any of this matter? It says the God of this world has been playing dirty pool, cheating big time at the card table. His brother is about to come in and flip the table, call him out, and reset the game with a fresh, unmarked deck. Enlil and Marduk play dirty. Yeshua and Enki do not, and that upsets them mightily. Enki, as geneticist, orchestrated the consciousness transfer into the zygote that became the avatar known as Yeshua HaMashiach. But Judas was not wrong when he said Yeshua was sent by Barbelo. That is why he was able to hold or achieve Christ within Christ within one lifetime. He is from the first Adam, or the Adam of light. And then, interestingly enough, towards the end of that, I heard Asclepius. Now, I have no idea why that came up, because I'm not into any particular. And honestly, well, you hear Asclepius, and I would have thought it was um, a philosopher like Ptolemy or Pliny the Younger or whatever. And I don't read a lot of that older philosophy. But when I first looked up Asclepius, it's one of the scientific genus, whatever names of various varieties of milkweed. And honestly, I forgot to look up the spiritual significance of milkweed. If it's really significant, I'll probably attach a comment, pin a comment with the significance of it. But when I tried to look up Asclepius as a philosopher, I found out that it wasn't. Asclepius is the god of healing and medicine, which they didn't say in Google was a direct correlation to Enki, but Enki is the god of healing and medicine and was highly known to be associated with snakes. And it talked about the sign of Asclepius. Now we know the caduceus is the staff with the two snakes going around it, but in medicine, that staff with the one snake twining around it that we see that refers to medicine and doctors and stuff, even down to this day, that's called the staff or the rod of Asclepius. So I thought it was very interesting. I mean, all of this is pretty interesting for me to be waking up out of a stone cold sleep at 1:30 in the morning, barely can see, and just kind of jotting all of this stuff down like that. So, yeah, that was interesting. And then the message at 2:02 that came in was Yeshua was a plant, and so are you. And then my thoughts went to remembering certain things from childhood, like early childhood. I've mentioned it before briefly on the channel, but I had something that it was a series of what I thought was recurring dreams as a child from about the age of probably 4, I would imagine, or so, up until about the age of 7 or so. On at least 3 or 4 occasions, I had a recurring dream. And up until a couple of years ago, I thought it was um I had the only way I had to describe the image that I saw in the dream was a walking uh it would look like an obelisk or a cigar type figure, but as a child I described it as a walking surfboard with eyes. Now truthfully, I don't know how it walked, because in the dream it didn't have feet, but I saw it like coming towards me. It was a shiny black object with white eyes and a mouth. It wasn't trying to hurt me, but as a child, I was afraid of it. But there was also some kind of a temporal anomaly or shift or what have you, if you will, because each and every time in those dreams, I was trying to get my family to safety. And the dream always started out with me in the backyard of the house, and this image coming kind of floating slowly towards me. And as I got afraid and ran into the house, I was trying to put myself and my entire family, which at the time was my mother, my father, my sister. I had an adult sister that was on the verge of moving on out the house at that time. She married at that when I was like 5.5. But it was my mother, my father, my sister, my grandmother, and myself. And I was trying to get all of us to hide underneath the cabinet, I mean the sink cabinet in the bathroom. How would even just me get underneath there? I mean, at the age of 3 or 4, if there was nothing else in it, I probably could have gotten in there. But I wasn't a type. I never hid in cabinets or anything like that. But in each and every time I had that recurring dream, when I saw that image, I was trying to get my whole family underneath the sink in the bathroom that me and my grandmother and my sister used. And oddly enough, we fit with room to spare. It was kind of like the scene in Men in Black when their whole world was in that locker inside of the police precinct, and then later on they figured out that our world was in some space creatures beings locker. It was like that, and I didn't know what that meant at the time until later on. I was looking at it. Was actually I saw a video that Sadhguru had posted at some point in time, and he was talking about the Devi. Now, when I was using mantras and things like that, I used the Devi prayer as a meditation piece, but I wasn't really into like the Vedic scriptures or Hindu religion per se. But when he was having this discussion, the image that I was shown as a representation of the Devi was what I was seeing in that recurring dream that I had as a small child. So it let me know that I was on the path long before I even knew there was a path. And the sense that I had as a child of being watched really was true. Now, I always felt presence. I sensed being watched. I was taught to be afraid of it because, like I said, I was raised with Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're taught that everything we can't see. Now, they do acknowledge the presence of angels, but when you see presence in your house or feel presence in your house, they're quick to want to assign that to being demonic. So I was taught from a very young child to be very, very afraid of feeling like I was being watched. Can't even, like you said, you couldn't even sleep naked in our house because it was just really, really weird. I had a lot of restrictions like that placed on me, but I always felt like I was being watched or watched over, so to speak. And then, let's see, when I was sitting there thinking about that, it made me think about the etheric implants and realize that that's probably where they came from. When I went back in December and got my Reiki attunements and took my certification course and all for Reiki, the Reiki master that attuned me said that she saw that I had some sort of an etheric implant. And at first, I was thinking that maybe it was something that had been done by somebody recently. She was like, no, no, this looks like something that was probably done in childhood. And she said, I don't think it was done to hurt you. I think it was done to basically keep you from awakening too fast, if you will. I mean, I was labeled as a gifted child and went through all of that, but I think it was kind of something to keep my third eye from blowing all the way open as a small child. That's the only thing I could figure out. And I felt it when she did what she did. Uh, about 30, 40 minutes after she said she saw it, she didn't tell me right away. When she first did the attunement, she just left the room, and I felt like it wasn't a bad headache, but I had like this really kind of weird pain in my head, like right up around the crown. And then I felt it kind of shift and slide around to the back, right around by my occipital bone. And I asked her about that. She said, I saw an etheric implant, but what I did, it'll probably fall off soon. And sure enough, later on that night, like I said, I saw all kinds of stuff in my third eye that I've never seen before. I've been meditating consistently since 2016, and I had never had visions like that appeared in my third eye. I saw an eye of Metatron. I mean, I called it an eye of Metatron because it looked a little different than the eye of Horus. And then I did see like an eye of Horus and then a winged Isis, and I had never seen those type of images. I mean, now I realize I do see things in my third eye a lot, but the way they appeared after that, Reiki attunement was dramatically different. I knew something was happening. And then it made me start thinking about things in childhood. Why, of all the reading lessons, and again, I'm sure there were plenty, because I was able to read by the age of 3. So Mama started with the reading lessons when I was 2. But the one verse that I remember beyond all other scriptures and all other reading lessons was Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. And that is, let's see, it's talking about the time when um, Eve was in the garden. It's at the point where Enki, who is described as a serpent in the Genesis story, but it is at the point where Enki actually gives Eve the truth. That is the verse that I got so much flack over because I could get the right in the first part of the verse, but then I couldn't recognize the. Now, of all the words for me not to recognize as I'm reading this, it says, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God actually say, you shall not eat of the tree in the garden?' And the woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, neither shall you touch it lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You shall surely not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil.'" Now that's pretty straightforward, but we've been so conditioned to believe and understand the notion that we've been fed that knowing good and bad for ourselves is an offense that was justifiable by the proclamation of death, that is the original sin. Our desire to know was what set us in a trajectory of death. That don't even sound right for somebody who's actually opened their minds. Now, it'll sound hypocritical or heretical or blasphemous and everything else to somebody that's still steeped in religious programming. But I'm looking at this book from what I've learned from looking at the other ancient texts as well, and from what's been shown, Lord Enki was represented often by the serpent, but the serpent also represents knowledge and wisdom. It says he was more cautious, he was wise. And did you notice the difference between God and the Lord God? Even here, uh, Steiner caught it in chapter 2, but that continues here. The Elohim, there are multiples, and in chapter 3, one of the Elohim, the actual one that actually created humans, didn't like the way the Lord God, his brother Enlil, was deceiving humans. And in a fit of consciousness, he broke protocol and decided to tell us the truth instead of continuing to persist with the lie that his brother had insisted to bind us with. But anyway, that's a whole nother video and a story. But I'm saying this was all at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking about these things and the reading lessons. And even though for years I considered it traumatic, but now that I'm looking at it in hindsight, it was very, very fitting. If Lord Enki was actually, like I said, if I'm a plant, if I was literally selected from birth to have my third eye opened, and to be shown how to connect the dots and see and understand and grasp the message of Yeshua in a way that his disciples and all just did not get while he was here, so much so they didn't get it till they actually pushed for his execution. But here I am being set aside as somebody, one of the ones that would be able to wake up, one of the star seeds that would come online and be able to wake up and be able to see this and teach it and get it. It's very fitting that Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, where it's actually introducing Lord Enki into the scriptures, would be the one that gave me so much trouble from the very beginning when I was a wee child. Then I started thinking, like I said, about having always been felt the presence, being having that interaction with the Devi and the birds that were always around me. Archangel Bokapi is master of the bird kingdom, and even from a small child, I always had cardinals and blue jays around me. There was an owl that lived in a tree, like right outside my bedroom window, from the time I was a probably old enough to even know what an owl was until I moved away from the house as an adult. That owl stayed in that tree. And one of the biggest woodpeckers I've ever seen in my entire life lived in a tree on the opposite side, still right outside the window. But if the window was here, facing this way, the owl would be over here, and the woodpecker was in a tree that was kind of straight ahead on the other side of the fence. And I mean, when I say a big woodpecker, it had to be every bit of this big. I've never seen a woodpecker that big. I know they have different species of them, but I've never personally seen a woodpecker that big, especially in Florida, from then till now. But he used to drill out, like in the military, they play reveille and taps when it's time to wake up and go to bed. I had a woodpecker outside my window, but I was always watched by birds. And then in 2020, when the clairaudience and all that started coming on again, I had multiple interactions and signs that were definitely not regular dealings with birds again. Um, let's see. And then that's why I was asking. I wrote down birds always around since infancy, earlier memories than most. I did. I actually had memories of things that happened when I was like 9 months, 18 months old. And I had thought those were dreams as well until I asked my mother about them and she remembered, them happening. And I said, Mama knew something. And I do understand that now. The things that she said and the way she was guarded. And there were a few times when there were things that were found in our yard that I now understand. I didn't understand it then, but there were people trying to do some form of folk magic. Vials of weird liquids that turn colors when you all that kind of stuff was going on. So long before I knew who I was, there were people around that knew who I was and were doing their very level best to see to it that I did not wake up. And then I asked, why would she insist on teaching me to read from Genesis? I remember we used to get Highlights magazine. I had Sesame Street, Electric Company, some every kind of something you would imagine. So why she had to teach me out of the Bible, I don't know. And then to like I said, so much to the point that that Genesis 3:1, it actually cost me several spankings, like with a belt, like traumatic. But Genesis chapter 3:1 was like forever cemented in there with me. And then I wrote down everything is a clue. We've been told there's nothing serious going on here. And that's like saying, don't worry about it. Go back to sleep when you wake up and smell electrical smoke in the house. And I used to think that because again, when I first got into channeling and stuff, Abraham Hicks is quick to say there's nothing serious going on here. And from Esther's standpoint, maybe there isn't because she was not a religious person. She don't know nothing of what's going on with the Anunnaki and she all of that's Greek to her. She has absolutely no idea. Please excuse, I don't know what he's got going on with the washer back there, but anyway the but yeah, there is something serious going on here. For most people don't think there is, and they've chosen to just turn over and go back to sleep, but that's like going back to sleep in a burning house. And that was shown to me earlier this year when I wanted to try to figure out why is this important and why do we have all of that going on. And I had mentioned it before, we'll talk about it more later, but I firmly believe that the time is closer upon us than we know. There were several prophets, mathematicians, and everything else that had tried to work out the end of time, so to speak, based on like the Mayan calendar and the lunar calendars and different ways they've tried to figure that time out. But whether it happens in 2060 or 2140 or whatever, we are within a generation or two or three, I believe, of seeing all of these things fulfilled, not because of a Sky Daddy story, but because of what they said in the beginning from the Anunnaki stories. And again, not trying to be disrespectful, but Revelation, it does have there's a timeline here. We didn't understand all of it, but it does talk about this base camp being coming back down after a major cataclysm. Early in the Bible, they talked about the cataclysm that happened with the flood story. They skipped over the first nuclear war in the Anunnaki wars, because this book is Yahweh's book. He don't want to tell us about all of it. I mean, well, let me put it this way. These were taken from sacred texts, but the whole idea of Christianity as it was put together is a Yahwehistic religion, so it would not be talking about any of the other Anunnaki except in the generic Elohim sense. So I get why it wasn't named, but they had said that the flood was not man, it wasn't caused by them, but they could have prevented. Enlil didn't want to prevent it. He wanted us exterminated. But they've known ever since the flood happened that there will be another natural cataclysm of that same magnitude coming again. They said within the next two shars, which two shars would be 7,200 years. We're getting real close, regardless of which calendar they try to use and which what have you. If the flood, if the Garden of Eden thing happened supposedly around 6,000 years ago, give or take, depending on where in the timeline any of that happened, we literally could be rolling up on an any day now type scenario. And the very fact that Yeshua pointed to the age of Aquarius before they executed him, that's the thing that really makes me think that it will happen within, probably if within my lifetime, and without, if not within my lifetime, then surely within my children or grandchildren's lifetime. I just really believe that because there's an urgency here, there's an awakening that's been happening on this planet. We saw it with all the religions kind of popping up, and then the New Age movement popping up, and then the beginning of channeled information starting to come on the planet. And truthfully, when I start talking about the book of the Gospel of Judas, it reminded me of some information that I got out of some channeled information that came out of the 80s before they had even translated the book of Judas. It kind of, they almost kind of confirm each other, if you will. And I'll get into that later. But I appreciate you taking time to listen to this with me. After that, I wrote down some names that I remember of different people from childhood. And considering the fact that I grew up in a town that literally had less than 15,000 people in the whole town, I had some pretty colorful people that visited that I remember having come through, probably because of my parents' association with the JWs and all of that. But yeah, it was a really reflective moment for me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it brought me back to remember 2017. I had like a little epiphany sitting on a park bench, if you will. Kind of, I at that point in time, I knew there was some kind of transformation happening with me, but I didn't understand fully exactly what it was. But I can remember I started meditating consistently in around September, October of 2016. By March of 2017, I understood that something was really happening. I had started kind of making connection and all of that. And I was seeing cosmic concepts. And that's something else that I want to talk about this before I went into the Gospel of Judas, because part of what I saw in somewhere in 2017 or 2018 when I started seeing like cosmic concepts and things like that, I had not looked into any of the Essene or Gnostic texts. I had no idea of any of this stuff that I'm talking about now. But what I was shown in meditation goes exactly to what they describe in in the Gospel of Judas, which is part of the Gnostic teachings. And mind you, well, no, I think the Gospel of Judas was translated in 2006. So it was around, but I had never laid eyes on it. I hadn't looked into any of the apocryphal text. I hadn't looked at any of the Anunnaki text. Like I said, I was a regular schmegular person whose life was just beginning to slow down. I had no idea that it was all going to come to a screeching halt and crash and burn and send me in a different direction. I was not on the spiritual path like that at that point. In 2017, I was still angry with religion and had kind of walked away from all of it. I was just working and trying to get my youngest one through high school and survive the nonsense that was my life at that time. But it all, now that I'm looking back on it, it's all clicking together in ways that even I can't even give justice to it. But it really it convicts me more and more every day that I know. And what I was about to say, what I saw in 2017, or the insight that I got, was that very often moments of extreme clarity are perceived by others as insanity, because people get these epiphanies or they get this insight and they're trying to find the words for it and can't find the words to describe it the way they want to. And people that don't understand that are quick to want to call somebody crazy just because they don't understand. But I know I'm not crazy. And I'm receiving literary confirmations of the things that I'm seeing. I'm connecting the dots in a powerful way. And as the nerdy esoteric librarian, as it were, it's my duty and honor to share it with other folks, because it's time for us to know the truth. Like they say, you'll know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. There's a lot of good gems in this book. I'm never going to sit here and say that there isn't good information in this book, but it has been manipulated, and it's time for us to unravel the knots. And that's kind of what I'm here for. So thank you for sharing that little moment of insight with me, and we'll get into some other discussions a little bit later. Until next time, family, peace and blessings to you. I love you so very much. Namaste.